All right, well, it's 10:30. We'll go ahead and call the audit committee meeting to order. I was wanting to welcome everybody here today. It is November 27th, 2023. We're meeting in County Office Building, McIntyre, room 241. I'll do a roll call of our participants real quick, and then we'll get started on our agenda. From the schools, Ms. Osborne?
Here.
Ms. Schmidt?
Here.
On the county side, Mr. Andrews? Here. Mr. Galloway is not here at the moment. Mr. Richardson? Here. And I have several items on the audit committee agenda for today. We're going to be talking about our FY23 audit results. We're going to get a report out from Chandra Usher, our assistant CFO for operations, on the audit work. And we'll also ask for Brown Edwards. They'll also be presenting the audit results. We will wrap up towards the end of the meeting today with an update on our. So without further ado, the 23 audit year-end coordination.
Yes, thank you, Jacob. Good morning, everyone. I'm Chandra Usher, the Assistant CFO for Operations. And this morning, I'd like to provide you some context and background for the structure that we created for our year-end process that led up to today's meeting. Unfortunately, we had some of our challenges from fiscal year 22 spill over into fiscal year 23. Those things include staff turnover, a lack of positions being filled. We went an entire year without having a controller in place, but it also led, and we also had additional leadership transitions that took place in the spring of fiscal year 23. Various offices within the fiscal year 23. We were able to onboard new auditors within fiscal year 23. But going back to some of the payroll stabilization, we also implemented HRIS within fiscal year 23, which is a whole nother system added to our ADP workforce now, which also led to some issues and some complications. Although it's not perfect, we're working on improvements. And because this is a new part of the software for this particular HRIS system, we're going through a software component of our system. As mentioned, and then through all this, we've recognized our challenges from fiscal year 22, so we created weekly check-in meetings for our year-end process. And through auditors here for some training sessions to get us up to speed with our onboarding and our creating our partner. We ramped up our communications within the Department of Finance and Budget to communicate throughout the organization in order for our external departments to understand what their expectations were in regards to compiling all our financial information to create our financial reports. We also developed a learning series, which we trained external departments on certain deliverables that align with those expectations that we set, for the entire organization. So with all that being said, I'd like to give thanks to some of the offices that are present with us today in our audience for their time and their collaboration on making sure that we were able to get through all of the things that we need to get through for our year-end procedures that leads us up to our audit committee meeting today. And I'd like to start with the Office of the Controller. And I'm super duper excited to announce that for one of the first times in 2 fiscal years, we're fully staffed in that office. So we have a controller, we have a deputy controller, we have an accounting manager, we have a payroll manager, we have all the accountants and payroll specialists that we need to fully support the organization. So I'm really excited about that. I'd like to go on to thank the Office of Grants and Agreements, the Office of Management and Budget, the Office of Revenue Administration, the Office of Procurement, the Office of the CFO, the Office of Treasury, and also Schools Fiscal Services, because we all spent time together collaborating and working together to make sure that we were able to get through all of our procedures, all of our new items that we had to take on for our staff in time and development, working with new auditors. There was a deeper dive that went into the audit this particular year. So just being able to work together and collaborate, it's been a wonderful experience. And we've been able to identify what we need to continue to improve as we grow and train our new staff and develop a smoother, more seamless process for the future. So with that being said, today Brown Edwards will present some of the highlights of our audit to date, the full report of the audit to include like our year-end results, our final revenues and expenditures, our final fund balance numbers, and all those things will be presented at the board meeting on December the 13th. So without further ado, I turn it back over to Jacob Sumner, our interim chief financial officer.
Thanks, Andrew. Any questions from committee members before I introduce our auditors about the process for year end? You know, I did want to talk about, before I introduce Megan to really lead the next part of the conversation, what it's like to have a new audit firm and to have a new partner in the year-end work. This year, and you'll see this in the results that Megan and Addison will talk about briefly, there's a learning of each other that we have to go through. They have to learn our environment, they have to learn our processes, they have to learn our systems. And we also have to learn about them, how they ask for documentation, the platforms they use, how they like to see things presented to help with their audit work papers. So this initial year is a lot of extra work where we're getting to know each other. We're learning how to work closely together, particularly on the timelines. And so I want to really thank Brown Edwards, and they've just been a great partner through this whole process. They've provided some training in areas that we needed. They've been very clear in the communications and participated in all the meetings that we've needed. And so this year was a year of transition of auditors. So this is hopefully next year won't be as intense as it was this year, but I just wanted to acknowledge the effort on both the staff side and the auditor side as we go into that. One thing that we'll talk about at December 13th at the Board of Supervisors meeting is Brown Edwards will also be back then to talk about the report along with Ms. Usher at the Board of Supervisors meeting. So Megan, would you like to talk about the audit results?
Okay, so I'm Megan Arkenbright. Nice to meet you guys. One of the things to start out with is to manage your expectations. Is that the December 13th may be a draft of the report. It may not be a final report. There's a lot to happen in the next 2.5 weeks between now and then in order to get things rolling. As Shenandra mentioned, and Jacob mentioned, right? New auditors, transitions, new employees on the county side. It's taken a massive effort from all parties involved. And we're learning about the county and the schools as they are learning about us. And so our goal is absolutely presenting drafts. If we can get finals, more power to us, right? Like that is the ultimate goal. So December 13th, we'll be here with more numbers, right? What we're gonna do today is kind of talk about where we are, what we're planning on doing in the next 2.5 weeks to get things completed. The first item is SPIDAs, which is subscription-based information technology arrangements. It is a new standard, And just like leases was implemented last year, SPIDA's was very similar, but honestly, a way bigger lift. And the reason for that is that leases are, everybody kind of knew what leases were out there, right? What buildings are we the lessor or the lessee of? What do we have? The subscription stuff was very widespread for county and for schools. The number of programs that are out there and just gathering that information with the IT departments on both county and schools were very helpful. But not only gathering the information, looking at the contracts, seeing if it qualifies and if it doesn't, and how much was it. And so we haven't quite gotten there, if you will, on SPIDAs. And so the decision is we're not going to reflect that in the financial statements. I do want to be clear that I don't think anybody's decision will be influenced if SPIDAs are not reflected in the FY23 ACFR. There's an asset and an offsetting liability, very little, if any, income statement impact. So I don't think any decision making will be altered. These agreements have always been there. It's just how they're being reflected in the ACFR would be different in FY24. It's not something you want to do wrong either, right? And you don't want to miss any, you don't want to record any wrong. And so we want to make sure we're doing it correct the first time, the first go round. So other open items, we still have some single audit items that are open. That is federal compliance. There were 6 programs that needed to be tested this year, and we are working on getting the last items. There aren't too many of those left, but that is an open item that we do need to wrap up. Specifically the ESSER program, we will need to wrap that one up. That one has maybe the most runway to go, but not concerned about that. ESSER, it's also called the Education Stabilization Fund. Yeah, we like our acronyms, and we call things many different things. So we also have some capital asset work that needs to be done on our end. There's been some back and forth on that. And so hopefully we're at a point where we can just audit the most recent. So to kind of explain a little bit of the audit process, right? So once we make requests, we get information, we ask a bunch of questions, and then we get more information. And so we have to audit the most recent information that was provided to us. But we're hoping to wrap that up this week. And the same with material variances, which are things that we ask, like when we're all said and done, all entries are in and everything, numbers are not moving, we compare current year to prior year. And then we ask questions about things that hit a certain threshold and make sure they make sense. So those are the things that Addison and I are planning on getting all the way through this week. Do you want to go over management letter items?
So we do issue a management letter. We'll probably have a draft of that in tandem with our financial report for the 13th. In that, we do provide some feedback where we feel operations or systems might be able to be modified or have a little bit more oversight in order to improve financial reporting, compliance, a variety of things. I do want to just cover a few of those and what that entailed. So the first one for us was there were some school grants which are connected to ones under the single audit where reimbursement requests have been submitted rather late after the fiscal year. That did create a little bit of a issue on our end as far as being able to prepare for it and test those in a efficient amount of time, but also that can lead to revenue recognition and some concerns about how the budget might be prepared regarding those programs or internal information that could be shared regarding with the status of those balances. So for us, it's just recommending that there's a little bit more oversight or timeliness in getting those prepared monthly, quarterly, just so that those numbers are not as focused on all at one point of the year. We also had some capital asset reporting comments that we'll have in there related to the process and review of determining capital assets and projects, especially the larger ones that might have more people involved, and trying to bring more people into the pool, if you will, on reviewing those, are things being picked up appropriately, and then just trying to stay on top of timeliness as far as being able to do that as the projects are being incurred instead of all at year end. There's also going to be looking at projects as far as when they're finalized, and are certain components of them able to be capitalized quicker than others. So that would be your larger capital projects that are more building related, where maybe parts of it go in service quicker than others, and getting them out of CIP and then beginning the use of them as a depreciable asset. So that would be our second comment there. The third one is fiduciary fund reporting. This is relating to funds in which the county could be considered a custodian of those assets, or is maintaining some level of control or oversight or maintenance of those assets. So this is just kind of on the act for presentation side, pulling in a few entities that are going to be considered custodial funds, such as the Emergency Communication Center, where those assets are kind of within pooled cash, or the county has fiduciary responsibility over those. We also have a few comments that we consider verbal comments. They're ones that aren't as immediate of a concern, if you will, or that carry something that we think could be addressed in a more appropriate or faster timeline. I do want to briefly cover them, but we won't really have them written in our response. One of those is related to taxes receivable that are being shown as outstanding within the financial reporting, specifically on property and real estate, and then determining an allowance over that and applying that method consistently, and making sure the allowance is appropriately addressing the outstanding balances of those taxes receivable. We've worked a lot with different departments to determine the nature of what's considered uncollectible. And we expect that there's going to be some reviews and changes over that process. And then the other one is census data that's getting reported to actuaries. In this instance, it was a really minor thing with just a couple dates not quite lining up. And we just like to include that in there as a verbal comment, especially when we know that the county might be progressing towards other systems implementation changes, so that there's always some extra awareness over just the little things that can go on that maybe people aren't picking up or thinking of right away. So that's going to cover the management letter comments for us. I know Megan's got a few other items.
Do you guys have any questions on those?
You guys are new, so you might not know this, but it seems like I heard the issue about the school grant reimbursements being submitted late. Seems like I heard about that last year.
You did.
Maybe we can talk about that as a school board.
Yeah, so I'll add some comments to that and help with some of the things that happened last year and this year, and Shannon, feel free to jump in here as well. I know in 22 we went through payroll clarity project, so we updated ADP on the payroll side, and then on this fiscal year in 23 we updated the human resource information system, the HRS component for ADP. Both of those core data elements feed into what ultimately is some of the grant reporting information. So as both of those systems have stabilized and continue to stabilize, there is an initial period after you go live with those systems where you're working through, make sure you get the reports out. The data, it has been cleaned properly and is being reported properly. So I think we had, unfortunately, yes, it's a similar item from last year, but it's very much system related.
Okay.
In my opinion, Chandra, I didn't know if you had anything else.
Yes, I also agree with the comments that Jacob made. In addition to, we've created additional tools and resources to help us get to the exact reporting that we need so that we can submit our reimbursements in a more timely fashion. It's just fallout from the additional challenges from fiscal year 22.
Any other questions on the management letter, the internal control stuff? We do also do state compliance work. That is for the Auditor Public Accounts. The state of Virginia says, here are the things, auditors, that you must look for. They actually give us an audit program of steps we have to do, which is super helpful, actually. And we did have a few findings The compliance stuff is a little bit more black and white, right? It's a little less room for auditor judgment. And also we're doing these procedures for the APA. So there was 2 items related to social services. One, not a huge deal. Again, it's compliance. It's that their co-op plan has to be, which is like their plan of how things work, has to be updated annually. And the last time it had been updated was in 2021. They actually did go ahead and update it after we brought it to their attention. But for APA compliance, it's a finding. But already since they've updated it, I do not expect that one to continue. The other social services finding was related to security. There are 2 items, one of which is every time an employee is hired, they have to sign a security policy. And then also security request forms when everybody, and those have to be updated every year. But both of those forms, obviously, as you can imagine, information and personally identifiable information has to be protected and held at a very high regard. And so the State Department of Social Services requires these forms to be done upon hiring and then again annually. And we just couldn't get all of the forms for all. We did a sample of just 3 people. We did not have the security policies for any of those 3. But then the security access form, there was just one of the 3 that they couldn't locate. So, and I think there's also been turnover at the social services for that. The third APA item is just the annual school report is required to be filed by September 15th, and it has not been filed. So, and that's, you know, a ripple effect, if you will, of the federal reimbursement information. It is no small feat to complete an annual school report, and it takes a lot of legwork and all the information. You want to make sure the inputs are correct, and so the schools are working on that now to make sure that it's done correctly the first time. But that is the third APA item. Those will be in the back part of the ACFR and the compliance section. The compliance section has yellow book, federal and state compliance. So those items will all be there in the back. The other item I was going to tell you guys about is GASB's calming down, we hope, knock on wood, because we've had so many new standards to implement the last, 5-6 years. I mean, well, really, I guess 10, because we started with pensions, and then we did OPEB, and then we did leases, and now we're doing the SPIDAs. So the only new standard coming out next year that'll not really even hopefully be significant is compensated absences standard, and it just clarifies which is what GASB does, right? They're like, hey, I think everybody's doing this any which way they want because we don't have a specific standard for it. And compensated absences is that way. It kind of defines what it is, what qualifies, has people earned it? If they've earned it and can use it later, you should record it as a liability. So we're not really expecting much impact on our clients. Most of them are already recording compensated absences as a liability. So hopefully, that is how it's going to actually play out, but that's applicable for next year. So that is the only one.
Any questions? Megan, I did have a quick question. So we are coming back on December 13th to present to the Board of Supervisors, and you mentioned presenting a draft. Would you mind walking through for the committee what your all's process is to go from your audit work, your field work, to draft financials, to the different partner reviews, and essentially about what stage of your process the drafts would be in?
Yes, it's good. I love to talk about what we do. So Addison's already started preparation of the ACFR, which, as you guys know, is pretty huge. And so there are some, open items related, like capital assets. Obviously, that note disclosure is not complete. So that's where we are in the process. as far as report prep. So once Addison completes it, I will do first review of it. We'll also have, I've also done first review of the binder already, which is where we keep all of our audit work papers. We'll need a second review of the binder and the report. And these things, probably a second review is probably 15 hours of a partner or director's time. And then it'll go on to, we do just because we prepare the report, and that is considered an independence thing, right? As far as Yellow Book goes. So in order, our safeguard is that another partner or reviewer who is not at all connected to the audit is going to review the report. So there's a cold review on just the report. And being is that it is our first year, I fully expect a lot more questions from both levels of review. But once we get through that cold review, it has to go through our checking process, whereby the entire report is read for grammar, make sure everything makes sense, make sure all numbers tie, make sure everything foots for all 200 plus pages of your report. So that process is also fairly bulky. But then once we get that, we will send a draft to Shenandra, to Jacob, to Jackson to review, make sure, because again, we're coming in, we're swooping in, we're doing an audit and we're doing a report, but we're not living Albemarle County and schools day to day. We are right now, but we're not doing it 365 like the directors of finance are. And so they're going to review it, make sure that everything that's in there is appropriate and correct. And we'll also send a rep letter at that time to be signed by several folks. The rep letter being about 7 pages of everything that we've asked over the course of the audit, and saying, yes, we told you everything that you needed to know to the best of our ability. We were honest. And then there's literally 2 pages that are strictly compliance related representations about how federal funds are recorded and spent. So once we get the signed rep letter back, we will issue the final report. In addition to the report though, we also have to turn in transmittals to the state of Virginia, which is a massive Excel spreadsheet. And that's probably, to be fair, 60 to hour. Addison's really he'll be doing it. Addison is the transmittal expert. The Excel spreadsheet is a 60-hour process, right? So, and that'll also need to go through review. That transmittal is actually what is due to the state of Virginia on December 15th. You have to submit your ACFR with it, but that transmittal is really what the state is looking for, because on the transmittal form, it's where they take data and information from all localities across the state, put them into a format that they can combine the information and do all their reporting on the state level. So that's due December 15th. So it's a lot to do in the next 2.5 to 3 weeks, but we have a schedule plan.
Let me make sure I understand this. There is one hard deadline to submit. Is that the only hard deadline we're looking at on?
And then we do need to present, per the state code, the auditor needs to present the report in public session by December 31st.
Report on the final?
As it can be a draft. I don't think the state code clarifies whether it's a final report or if it's a draft report. We present it on drafts, and
You understand that December 13th is our last scheduled
yeah,
meeting?
we do. I know. Yes.
Okay.
Which is also, I think, one of the reasons why it'll more likely be that draft. And Megan, thank you for going through the details. As far as the process, what we anticipate on by December 13th, where the auditors will be in the process, is really probably in that quality control review, and not in preparing the financial statements or compiling together the notes and the statistical tables and things like that. But it'd be pretty much in a complete format. But not with the final seal of approval on it. So the numbers we won't expect any of the numbers to change from what we present to the board on December 13th to actually submit to the state on the 15th.
are there limitations on that? I mean, at what point does the December 13th approval, what would it take for it to not be effective if what we're approving is a draft?
I mean, I think that's a legal question as to what the state, like, as to what the state code says, but yeah, I think if we present a draft, I think with numbers that aren't changing, I wouldn't present a draft if I expected numbers to change.
Okay.
I would not feel comfortable doing that. So our goal is that these are good numbers. It just is not, wrapped in a bow, ready to go to the state.
And Supervisor Andrews, I think the request of the board is to be accept the report or to receive the information, and so there shouldn't be too much. I don't anticipate there being a formal action that the board supervisor will need to take,
Okay.
other than to receive the presentation and the information that the auditors are required to receive.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, thank you all. Thanks, Addison. Thanks, Megan. Really appreciate that. The next item is our annual report for fraud, waste, and abuse program. Lauren Andrick's going to present that in her capacity as our Chief of Shared Services and Risk Management.
Thank you. Good morning. Thank you for allowing me this time to share with you all of our hard work over the past year. And I'd like to especially thank the Shared Services team, the Department of Social Services, and Office of Procurement, the Office Unit of Accounting, and the Controller's Office for their help in several items that came up over the past year. Just for background, this is a new program that started in January of this year. The Board of Supervisors established this program and asked for an annual audit, annual update during the fall audit committee meeting. And so I'm here to present that to you today. We've established a process and procedure in conjunction with the school's HR and leadership, along with the county HR and leadership, to make sure that if there's any disciplinary actions that come up as a result of an investigation, that we would turn that over to HR. And so there is a definite discrete fine line between risk management and disciplinary action for staff if that were to arise. I did want to report that there were only 3 reports this year, which is, we expected a small outcome this year because it's a new program and people are getting used to it. There was one frivolous complaint about a employee reimbursement form. There was a change that apparently someone felt obliged to report that change through the system. Since it is an anonymous system, we were not able to circle back and make sure that it wasn't a training issue or to clarify that form. There was one report via our website on Ethical Advocate that the board approved. There was an alleged misuse of purchasing card for a Department of Social Services benefits recipient. We thoroughly investigated this report and we determined that it was unfounded. The report's been closed with no further action. The process for that was documented and available upon request. There was one report via phone. A member of the public reported abuse of SNAP benefits by a neighbor. And so that is currently being actively investigated by the Department of Social Services fraud team. So at this time, we are monitoring all the open reports. Currently, we're expecting this last one to be closed with no further action from the risk management team, but we will notify you when that's closed officially.
Laura, would you remind the committee how folks can participate and make reports as part of this program?
Yes, anonymous or identified reports can be made via phone, email at reportfraud@albemarle.org, or online through Ethical Advocate. This is an anonymous fraud, waste, and abuse reporting system that is monitored. If a person reports any item of concern, it will be investigated and responded to within 1 business day. And if someone were to leave their name and contact information, we would contact them with the findings. So far, we have not had anyone identify themselves.
Any questions from the committee on this program?
Will this be reported on the 13th as well to the full board?
We have not included it at this point in time in the draft executive summary for the audit results. We absolutely can share this letter and this annual report with the full board as a follow-up to the audit committee. We'd be glad to do that as well.
I think it might be helpful to have people understand that advertise the fact that it's happening. We've had these investigations so far. It's a good program. We want to make sure people are aware of it.
Any other questions?
One other question. You mentioned something about making HR aware, but of course that means that the reporting line is for both schools and county.
It is, it's for any part of Albemarle County, and so that would be schools, any of our partner agencies, anyone that's affiliated with Albemarle County. And so what we do is we determine the source of the report is if it's the category of it, if it's financial in nature, if it's an employee grievance in nature, or if it's retaliatory. We do an assessment of that. If it is a HR issue, non-compliance with rules, policies, procedures, we investigate, build a file, and then turn that over to HR for their use.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, anything else? All right, well, that's all we have on the agenda for today. So, this is a formal committee. If there's no other questions or items to discuss, I'll look for a motion to adjourn. Aye. We're adjourned. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.